On a clear night, in the vast emptiness where only the stars stood as witnesses, an unseen world began to turn. Behind the glow of computer screens, countless fingers moved like an invisible orchestra, orchestrating the flow of code. Without averting his eyes from the cold light of the screen, someone, unknown to anyone, unnoticed by all, pushed the boundaries of the digital realm with each keystroke. This individual, diving deep into the hidden corners of knowledge, prepared to breach the walls that kept secrets locked away. There was only one goal in his mind: to uncover the truths kept behind closed doors. Yet, at this very moment where it all began, invisible threats continued to grow. While the global giants appeared unaware of these tremors in the digital world, in reality, everything was in plain sight. Information had transformed from a mere tool into a weapon. Those lurking in the shadows sought to seize control of this new world order. But there was an unknown detail. The real story lay not just in the code, but in something far deeper. With a mind racing ahead, the individual planned a move that would change the game entirely. Jeremy Hammond emerged as one of the most prominent figures in the digital activism Hacktivism scene and made a significant impact in the cyber world. A member of infamous hacker groups like Anonymous and LulzSec, Hammond targeted governments, law enforcement agencies, and large corporations with various cyber attacks. As one of the most radical members of these groups, he aimed to harm major institutions for ideological purposes. His goal was not only to create chaos in the cyber world, but also to inform the public in line with the principles of freedom of information and anti-establishment. Thus, Hammond did not see himself as a criminal, but rather as an activist and a freedom fighter. However, Hammond was not a lone figure in the hacker world. The Anonymous, Ozzy, and Call LulzSec groups he was involved with gained international recognition by organizing large-scale cyber attacks. Their main objective was to raise public awareness by leaking confidential information, particularly from governments and large corporations. Hammond played a strategic role in these groups' operations. The anonymity of Anonymous and the anarchic and playful nature of LulzSec further reinforced Hammond's ideological stance. His role within these groups positioned him as one of the most important minds behind these cyber attacks. Jeremy Hammond's foray into the cyber world began at a young age. A computer and programming enthusiast as a child, Hammond began using these skills as a political tool. With the growth of the internet, a vast playground emerged for cyber activists like him. In the mid-2000s, a hacker collective known as Anonymous began to make a significant impact in the digital world. Anonymous's core mission was to promote freedom of access to information, oppose censorship, and resist oppressive government policies. These ideologies aligned perfectly with Hammond's political views, drawing him into Anonymous. LulzSec, although a shorter-lived group than Anonymous, had a profound impact. Founded in 2011, this group organized large-scale cyber attacks, especially targeting government websites. LulzSec's ideology was not only about delivering political messages, but also about performing attacks for fun. The movement, starting with the term lulz, meaning fun in internet slang, was seen as a playful reflection of digital anarchy. During this period, Hammond joined LulzSec and adopted a more radical path. The strategic intelligence and technical expertise in LulzSec's attacks, combined with Hammond's skills, opened the door to large-scale attacks. Hammond's role within LulzSec and Anonymous culminated in several large-scale cyber attacks. The years 2011 and 2012 were the most active periods for these groups. One of the biggest incidents was the attack on a global security consulting firm called Stratfor. Hammond and his group infiltrated Stratfor's database, stealing millions of emails and credit card details. These were later leaked on platforms like WikiLeaks, causing a global stir. This attack was a reflection of Hammond's ideological war against governments and security agencies. For him, these attacks were not just technical accomplishments, but also political protests. However, the Stratfor attack also highlighted how influential Hammond was within Anonymous and LulzSec. The leaks caused an international outcry, prompting a broad investigation into members of Anonymous and LulzSec, especially by the US government. Hammond's prominence grew, and authorities began to track him down. The Stratfor incident cemented Hammond's status as not only a hacker, but also as an anti-government figure known worldwide. However, it also attracted the attention of law enforcement agencies, raising questions about what would happen next. One of the most critical events in Hammond's series of cyber attacks was against various US security and intelligence agencies. Anonymous and LulzSec, in particular, infiltrated systems belonging to the FBI and other federal agencies, stealing confidential documents and information. Some of these documents pertain to covert operations and national security issues. These cyber attacks raised significant concerns in the US, revealing how vulnerable digital security could be. Hammond played an active role in these operations, particularly in selecting strategic targets. These attacks marked moments when digital security in the US was seriously compromised. These attacks were often planned from the dark corners of the internet, using anonymous forums and encrypted communication tools. The methods used by the group made tracking them difficult, and authorities struggled to identify its members for a long time. However, traces left by Hammond during the Stratfor attack eventually led authorities to him. Living in Chicago, Hammond became the target of the FBI and law enforcement agencies. In 2012, Hammond was arrested during an FBI operation, becoming one of the most symbolic figures of international operations against cyber attacks. His arrest dealt a significant blow to both Anonymous and LulzSec. Jeremy Hammond continued his cyber attacks under the veil of anonymity for a long time. The encryption techniques he used and the communication methods with other group members helped him keep his identity hidden. Anonymous and LulzSec were particularly successful at protecting the identities of their members. These groups typically communicated via encrypted messaging tools and the dark web. Hammond carried out his attacks within this anonymous structure. The attacks on high-profile targets like Stratfor and the FBI were meticulously planned and executed with technical expertise that prevented his identity from being exposed. However, this situation couldn't last forever. A small mistake Hammond made during the Stratfor attack led authorities to trace him. Some IP addresses and digital footprints left during the attacks revealed Hammond's identity. The FBI followed these clues, ultimately identifying him and capturing him. Hammond's arrest demonstrated that, no matter how sophisticated and skilled they were, groups like Anonymous and LulzSec could still leave behind traces. Nevertheless, Hammond managed to conceal his identity for a long time before these traces were discovered. This event underscored how challenging and risky it was for hackers to remain anonymous. The cyber attacks carried out by Jeremy Hammond posed a significant threat to government's digital security, reaching their peak with his arrest. The Stratfor attack, in particular, was the pinnacle of Hammond's career, as it caused a global sensation by leaking millions of sensitive documents to the public. Hammond and LulzSec's actions not only impacted the digital world, but also caused substantial anxiety in the physical world. The US government claimed that these attacks jeopardized national security, prompting them to make considerable efforts to apprehend Hammond. His eventual capture, following extensive surveillance operations by the FBI, was one of the key moments that questioned the limits of cybersecurity. Hammond's arrest marked a turning point for hackers worldwide. His capture and subsequent trial revealed how vulnerable digital activists could be, despite their prowess. The magnitude of the damage Hammond caused, and the success of his strategic attacks, made his arrest all the more significant. These attacks demonstrated how powerful the digital world had become, and how even governments and law enforcement agencies could remain defenseless. Stealing Stratfor's emails and credit card information was not just a major cybercrime, but also an act capable of shifting global power dynamics. This peak solidified Hammond's lasting place in the cyber world. The cyber attacks carried out by Jeremy Hammond with groups like Anonymous and LulzSec inspired similar incidents in the cyber world. Especially during the 2010s, the number of hacker collectives increased, leading to more radical actions. In 2013, Edward Snowden's leak concerning the US National Security Agency, NSA, was seen as an event quite similar to Hammond's actions. Snowden started a global debate by leaking government documents, prompting governments to reevaluate their secrecy policies. Much like Hammond's actions, Snowden's disclosures highlighted the influence of government transparency and accountability. Additionally, other cyber activists followed in Hammond's footsteps. Platforms like WikiLeaks, in particular, became central hubs for leaks targeting governments and large corporations worldwide. Assange and his team embraced an ideological stance similar to Hammond's, encouraging global information leaks. These similar events showed how widespread cyber activism had become and how hackers could disrupt the balance of power in the digital world. However, each of these events was perceived as an echo of Hammond's actions. These types of attacks continued to reveal the fragility of cybersecurity and the dangers of the digital age, each considered a part of Hammond's legacy. Jeremy Hammond is currently serving his 10-year prison sentence, but his influence on hacktivist communities and the cyber world is still being felt. While his capture and sentencing were seen as important lessons in the world of cybersecurity, cyber attacks and digital activism continue at full speed. During his time in prison, Hammond has made various statements, maintaining his ideological stance in the cyber world and continuing to advocate for cyber activism. His actions are still seen by many as a controversial tale of heroism. Some argue that he was merely fighting against injustice, while others view him as a hacker who endangered national security. While Hammond serves his sentence, groups like Anonymous and LulzSec still operate in the dark corners of the internet. These groups carry on Hammond's ideological legacy, continuing their presence in the cyber world. However, today's cybersecurity measures have become much more advanced, and governments are better prepared for such attacks. Nonetheless, Hammond's events once again demonstrated how powerful hacktivism can be and how cyber attacks can create a significant impact globally. His legacy has left a lasting mark in the world of cyber activism, showcasing the strength of online protests